Hey guys, welcome back to the third episode of the Wave Running Podcast. Today we're joined here by James Constantine. He just finished his 6.5 year tenure at Athletics New South Wales as the General Manager of Marketing Communications and Emerging Events. I think that was your title, if I'm not mistaken. But I guess can you quickly kind of, run down how you got to Athletics NSW and I guess a bit of a background?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a hell of a ride. Funnily enough, this is actually my first full-time job. So I did a undergraduate of Bachelor of Arts and Science at Sydney University. So I actually majored in psychology. The dream was to become a sports psychologist for an elite sports team. So whether that was in Australia or particularly in the US, like the collegiate system and the sports over in the US have so many amazing opportunities. I finished my degree. I didn't get the sort of high distinction average I needed to do honors straight away. So I sort of looked around for 6 months for some work opportunities, graduate, volunteer, whatever. Extremely hard to break into. So I always knew that I wanted to end up in sport. So I sort of went on a slightly different path and did a postgraduate diploma in sport administration at ACPE, the Australian College of Physical Education. So that's in Sydney Olympic Park as well, just down the road from my work at the moment. So I did a 1 year online course with them. Did really well. Really enjoyed it. Working online, we all did over COVID, but so back then I'd never done classes or any work purely online. So it was quite a different experience. But I think during that time, I learned to be quite self-sufficient and doing all the research and essay writing and everything by yourself with sort of not much guidance. I could always contact my lecturers and tutors via email and have a call with them every now and then, but sort of 98% of it was on me. So I think I developed a lot of self-sufficiency over that period, which has probably helped a lot in the workplace I'm in now and the job I have, because I don't have much of a full-time team around me. So anyway, so I finished that, and then the internship for Athletics New South Wales came up. And I think I was just turned 23 at this stage. So I'd sort of done 5 years of tertiary education, and I sort of thought, oh yeah, athletics, I run a little bit. At this stage I wasn't running marathons. Did a couple of cedar surfs, and I thought, oh yeah, athletics, that sounds good. So I went in, did an internship with the competitions department, so sorting hip numbers, doing point scores, doing the running out water to the officials, all the sort of jobs that have to be done in any sport. But so all the tasks that, might be the ones that you sort of shift to someone who's an intern rather than full-time staff. But it got my foot in the door, and then an opportunity rolled around where they were recruiting for a officials coordinator, officials and volunteers. And I got that. And that's sort of where I started with ANSW, and then I sort of progressed up from there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and everyone would agree with me when I say that, you've been a huge part of the athletics community. So it's pretty interesting to hear that, like, you weren't a really kind of keen runner before you got into the athletics NSW scene, and you just started off as like an intern that ran a couple of city surfs kind of thing. But yeah, when did you get to that kind of general manager of marketing and communications title?
Yeah, so that came about 18 months ago, I think. So the progression, I started in the officials and volunteer capacity, and I should mention the officials are also volunteers. It's not really widely known that all the officials out at the track and field meets, they're not paid. Up until very recently, actually, we just rolled out it's not a paid strategy, it's a remuneration strategy. I won't get into that. But on the whole, they have volunteered an extraordinary amount of hours of their time. So that they're the bedrock of our sport. So I looked after them for a year, which was great. Now I moved into the competitions and events department. And then I was basically helping out the competition manager deliver all the events. So whether it was track and field, whether it was milers, whether it was open track and field championships, cross countries, Sydney 10. That's when I first started working on the Sydney 10, not leading it, but working on it. Did that for a couple of years. And then there was this interesting sort of I'll say relationship between the competition and the marketing manager. Ironically, neither of them sort of talked to each other very much, and there was a bit of a breakdown in communication within ANSW at that time. So the CEO basically said to me, "Look, a lot of the athletes and sort of like how they want to be communicated with through your experience in events. Why don't you go into a support role with the marketing department?" And I sort of said, "Sure, that sounds good. I like communicating. I like talking to runners. I like talking to athletes." And with essentially zero marketing background, I sort of fell into I call like a marketing coordinator. I think it was like lead was in my title. Doesn't really mean a whole lot, but basically got my first taste of what marketing and communications was all about. And again, it was really simple stuff. It was just sending emails and updating the website to begin with. But then an opportunity opened up where the marketing manager left, and this was 2 years ago. So it was right around Sydney 10, 2021, and I basically jumped at it. I said, "I'm ready for it. I know I haven't got any tertiary education in it, but I've sort of learned the ropes over the last year and a half, and I reckon I'm ready." And basically, I was really thankful to get the opportunity to become marketing manager, and then end up getting promoted to general manager with a whole business restructure about 12, 18 months ago, where we then have the general manager of sport delivery and then also general manager of clubs and community. So basically the three big pillars of our business: competition, clubs, and communications, all basically got stood up as general managers. And that's my title for another couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think, yeah, when you got that role and yeah, 2 years ago at Sydney 10, I think that was when I first got my, first paid photography job as well, which is pretty cool. I remember taking photos for like, yeah, pretty much everyone. I remember taking a good photo of Kieran Tour and Tom DeCanto that year, I think, which
Yeah.
is pretty
Yep.
cool. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed getting a lot of photos out there with the fog because it was like a different atmosphere. It made for some cool pictures. Yeah, since you took over, I think, the marketing has gotten a lot better. Like, I think you're reaching more people. The Athletics NSW Instagram page has grown significantly. And like you're saying, a lot of the athletes as well, through your commentating and all that, which we'll get into later as well. So I think it was, yeah, a cool progression that you went from an intern to all the way up the ranks. And yeah, I think we met a long time ago. It was at a 3K champs or the morning before that, where you came to a UC Run Club event at Rhodes Park. I don't know if you
I
remember.
remember that well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that well. I,
Yeah,
I
we got.
think I think there was a Scottish guy who I came across, and he happened to be like an 840 runner. And he's like, "Oh, there's a track meet. Oh, I'll rock up." And then he came second in the B race or
Yeah,
something. I remember that well, and I think I ran like the 25-minute pace, because I remember you said Run Club. I think maybe you and SW were doing like a collab
yeah,
pacing job at Rhodes, and yeah, I was running with it might have been you and like Ian Zoo or someone else.
yeah,
But that
something
was
like that.
the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was awesome. And that was when I first kind of, saw that there was this, athletics NSW track scene in Sydney because I was quite new to Sydney at the time. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is cool. I'm gonna try and race the 3K, even though I only found out about it that day. Because back then I think you could sign up on the day. And yeah, I remember doing the first 3K, well, the community 3K. And I remember thinking that I was the best runner at that time, and then I got absolutely destroyed by everyone and ran like 10:30 or something like that. But it was a good eye opener to see how talented and crazy the Sydney running community is compared to like where I've lived in the past. Because I was in a small island in Thailand before, so I kind of felt like a big fish in a small pond. Whereas obviously I'm a small fish in a big pond in Sydney. So yeah, it was just so cool to see that. And then that's when I kind of fell in love with the sport even more and wanted to get slowly more involved in it over time. And yeah, kind of built my way up the UCID Run Club executive positions, starting with just a general executive position to the pacing subcommittee to make sure that all, different groups are accommodated basically. And then I eventually moved up to vice president and had more control over the direction of the club and stuff. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And then I think once I graduated, because it was COVID, well, yeah, I couldn't go back to Japan or Thailand, which is what I originally intended. But I think that was for the better because It allowed me to kind of stay and see more of Sydney without having to study all the time and whatever. I think that's when I, yeah, started doing more photography and being in contact with you a bit more, seeing, what I can do to help out and stuff, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I think I also did the IRP Challenge 5K, the community event as well there when it was raining a lot. And I remember that was a huge step forward for UC Run Club too, because yeah, we were a community kind of club, but we were slowly getting more involved in the track stuff as well, thanks to our connections with you. So yeah, we appreciate what you've done, inside and outside of your marketing role as well to help out with, pushing the sport forward, basically.
Oh, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Like, I think it's the funny thing is with track in particular is that throughout my time in running, and this goes back to sort of the Nike Run Club days when I remember Sam Strutt was the head coach, and I met one of my best mates, Nick Daniels, and a lot of sort of the start. That's when I started to start getting to know some of the people in the Sydney running scene. And even though I remember going onto the track at ES Marks as a pacer with the Nike Run Club, I thought, oh shit, we're on a track. Like, I'm not sure how fast to run here. Like, and I'm actually running, like helping run the actual session for the other runners who were testing shoes and things. So even though I had that real adversity the first time I saw an athletics track, but I think just like breaking down that barrier and having a barrier and having the awareness of like, there are community events and there are 5 minute K runners out there, and putting on events where we're able to take photos. You were able to take photos of people running 5 minute Ks on track, and then being able to use that to promote the next event. That imagery and that likeness to other park runners, weekend joggers, social runners, uni students, whatever, is so powerful because they can see themselves at the event doing the event, and all they need to then do is sign up for $15, whatever it costs, and have a really good time with their friends. Now I go, yes, Marks, I was there with Run Crew last night, and there's like 60 people doing 5 minute Ks, and no one cares. No one cares how fast or whatever pace anyone's running, because everyone's just using that as part of their general training week to week, and that just did not exist like 6, 7, 8 years ago. So that's been something I've been super happy to witness in Sydney, and not to say that I was a big part of the reason why that's happened, but I'd like to think that just being able to shine a light on what was organically happening, that was a really cool movement within Sydney over the last few years.
Yeah, 100%. I think even I, as a runner that ran a fair amount, was a bit nervous stepping onto the track for a race for the first time in Sydney. And yeah, I think as the years went on, it became so normal that, like you said, now there's plenty of people with all abilities there. But you're also involved with Run New South Wales, which I never actually got the connection between NSW and Run. Are they the same thing or no?
They are. I did the best job I could to make it different. So Run New South Wales is just a brand extension of Athletics New South Wales. The reason why it exists is basically for exactly the same reason what we were talking about then. It's that Athletics New South Wales, whenever you say athletics or track and field, people think Olympics and elite and Rowan Browning and Jess Hull, or whatever Olympic athlete they're thinking of. So the Run New South Wales brand was created way before I joined Athletics New South Wales. It was created by Scott Westcott. And Scotty worked at ANSW for about 5 or 6 years and had a regional recreational running series. So he basically got the iconic Run New South Wales van, which still exists today. It's literally and metaphorically on its last wheels, but it's still going around. So he went to, like, it was crazy. He was based out of the Hunter in Newcastle, and Scotty, for those who know him, is an absolute legend. He was, I think, the oldest ever marathon debutant at the Olympics for Australia at Rio. I think it was 43. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, he did a lot for the running scene regionally, and went to Armidale. He went to obviously Newcastle, went down to Wollongong, started a lot of events. But I guess the drawback, and particularly when he left, was that there was no real direct replacement for Scott. There was no one who was tasked with a full-time job of delivering a monthly 500-ish person recreational fun run somewhere in New South Wales. But then we had these two events called the Sydney 10 and the Sydney Half. And actually, at that time, Scott built the Fernley 15, which was the 15K road run in Newcastle. So we had basically three bigger events and then all these small regional events. So it was kind of like a business decision of ANSW that, okay, obviously we want, like, the Run New South Wales brand, we see merit. It's a good way to connect with the running community around New South Wales without using terms athletics or, track, which, was, again, taboo like 10 years ago with the recreational running community. And parkrun at that time wasn't even really a thing. I think it started sort of in 2012, 2013, then didn't really take off until sort of 2015. So all these concepts that are just part of the general running, conversations now didn't really exist back then. So the sort of decision to, slowly let those events become more self-sufficient, which with whoever was hosting it, so whether it was sort of the local school, local running club, then became local park runs who were assisting with a lot of the volunteers. They sort of went off and then ran their own events, and ANSW, under the brand of Run New South Wales, retained the Sydney 10, the Sydney Half, and the Fernley 15. And so then when I went into that, I guess, more marketing role, one of the things that also came onto me in lieu of Scott not being there for a couple of years was, well, James is the runner and he understands it better than anyone else in the business. It makes sense to sort of give him more of the responsibility for the Run New South Wales events. So that's when I was like, okay, right, Sydney 10, Sydney Half, Fernley 15, what are these all about? So I went to them, I learned about them, I talked to people, I saw how it ran, and then sort of decided, okay, well, why these only 1,000 person events when the Sydney Harbour 10K has 6,000? There's no, understanding that's in the CBD. It's very easy for people to get to the epicenter of the city to run a fun run. But I mean, Olympic Park's iconic. Like, this is where the Olympics happen. This is a great course. There's no traffic lights. There's very little road closures. These should be major events. So yeah, that's where I got to work, and then started talking to people like, how we get more groups here, how do we get non-members here, how do we engage USID Run Club, UNSW Run Society, these sorts of groups. What Kirribilli runners had 10 out there, but I know there's 80 in that group. How do we get 30 there next year? All these sorts of things start popping into my head, and just, yeah, that's probably where the connection that I started to have just got stronger by virtue of being able to communicate through really good running events. And I sort of took it upon myself to say, right, I'm going to grow these things to the levels that, hopefully they can get to. And, on Sunday, we sort of had almost double the amount of people that we had in 2018 at the Sydney 10. So, I think I've sort of achieved that somewhat, I'd say.
Yeah, 100%. I think Sydney 10 still to this date is like one of my favorite, or if not my favorite, road race that I've done over the years. Yeah, just a flat, good course. Everyone's so fast. And like last year, I think if you ran a sub 40, like ran 39:59, you only would have placed 350th, which shows like the caliber of the field. But then there's everyone behind that as well. It's just everyone having a super good time, just running their hearts out on the flat, fast course. So yeah, I'm glad that it's still continuing to grow each year, because I think the potential for that is super high. And like you said, the roads are so wide, so we can have more people. There's always going to be space for thousands of more people. We can always make more waves and everything as well. So I'm keen to see how big it gets before I come back to Sydney. And moving on a little more to recent times, obviously you've announced that you're, departing from Athletics New South Wales, got this new opportunity at Pont3, which is like an event management and consulting business, from what I understand. They obviously look after the Sydney Marathon currently, formerly known as the Blackmores Sydney Running Festival. And I think they also look after Sydney Harbour 5K and 10K, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, correct. They own and deliver that event. So they, Athletics Australia own the Sydney Marathon, so they deliver that one, but they actually own and deliver the Harbour 10K and the 5K.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think the other thing I found out was they even helped out with organizing or consulting with Bondi and Manly, and also the Sydney Pride event as well. And obviously a lot of these events require road closures, so there's like a lot of admin and stuff involved. So it's obviously a huge step up in your career in terms of like responsibility as well. what kind of made you want to take this step forward to something new?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll sort of answer that in two ways. I think Pont3 is it it's a really exciting place to be going into at this point in time. So the Sydney Marathon, for those who aren't aware, is one of the candidate world major marathons in the world at the moment. So Chengdu in China and Cape Town, South Africa, are two other candidates. They all three of them theoretically could become world majors. They're not in competition with one another, and the vote for it, whether Sydney Marathon becomes a world major, is actually the race directors of the 6 world majors. So they have the say as to whether Sydney becomes a world major. So this is the second of 3 years for their candidature. And there are some lofty criteria, and I think it's no secret that one of them is to get a lot more people to the marathon. So that's exactly what priority number one on their list. And then very second priority is to bring a real experience to the marathon. So to not have the dead Ks around Centennial Park. How do we actually activate the course? How do we get people out on the course? How do we make sure that this is just as memorable as some of the other marathons around the world? So they're really there's some really big challenges, but also some really exciting challenges ahead for this year and next year for the Sydney Marathon. So basically I was actually at a cafe with Wayne Larden, and Wayne's CEO of Pont3, and we were just chatting, and he just so happened to tell me that the staff in Pont3 had doubled in 6 months. So there was a lot of expansion happening in the office, but made perfect sense because they're trying to really ramp up and get this world major status, which would be amazing. So I sort of it was sort of mentioned that there was a marketing role going. I said, well, I'd regret if I didn't throw my hat in the ring. So it was just, it almost felt like a stars aligning moment, because I really enjoy my job at Athletics New South Wales, but to be able to be part of the journey for Sydney Marathon to become a world major, and just doing whatever I can and the role that I have to be able to achieve that it would be a massive moment in my career, and something that I feel like would only benefit me more with opportunities moving forwards. So I ended up being successful in a role there called the digital marketing manager role. So I've got a direct report to a guy called Tim Wish, and he's a fantastic guy. Was actually the national marketing manager for the Colour Run for quite a few years, a really successful fun run event, and he's got some fantastic ideas. Wayne has been running the business for 18 years now, and the Sydney Marathon for 18 years. So it's a very exciting workplace and a very exciting time to be going to Pont3. So as much as I love Athletics New South Wales, and I love the sport, it's great. It's a good time, I think, for me to sort of take that next step in my career.
Yeah, going back to what we were talking about earlier with your connections to a lot of the big names of Australia and stuff, like, because some marathoners as well. I think you'll help in getting those fast runners that are quite well known to the race, which will also help. Well, I'm not sure if it will, but I have a feeling it would help Sydney Marathon become a world major if there's more elite runners competing in the field as well. So yeah, I think you're going to be good for that. And obviously you have the experience now from Athletics NSW, like a lot of it. So I'm keen to see what you can do with Pont3. So yeah, super excited. I think, if you manage to make it happen, maybe I'll consider Sydney Marathon as my first world major marathon before Tokyo.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I will say it won't be me. It will be the full team. And I think it goes without saying the amount of work, and for anyone who's run a world major, even seen on TV, like the logistical challenges so I was in New York in November, and I got I was really lucky. I got to go behind the scenes on a race director tour, and a big shout out to Keith Hong for actually giving me the opportunity and the networking opportunity to be able to go over there. But it was just phenomenal, the amount of people involved and the amount of just everything, all the resource, the human resource, the money, the equipment, the transport, the venue hire, the expo, like just everything was, it's America. It's just massive. And then the people, the millions of people on the course. I remember being on Fifth Avenue, and which was in the last mile of the race, and you couldn't get closer than 10 deep to actually go to the barrier to see the runners go past. It was absolute mayhem, but I loved it so much. And I thought, wow, like, this is, I've run Berlin and that was amazing, but New York, just to shut down probably the major city in the world, I was just blown away. So, Wayne was there as well. A couple of his operations guys that were actually in Boston a few weeks ago, doing a tour with their operations team. Wayne was also in London. He was taking photos of Kiptum and Hassan and sending it to me from the finish line, which was cool. So, the guys know that they know what's ahead of them. And I think that there's a lot of people out there. And to be honest, I was 6 months ago thinking, how the hell is Sydney going to become world major? How are we going to become New York? How are we going to become London? Like, we know what it looks like. How do we get that from the 4,500 people doing the marathon at the moment? But I can tell you, and the numbers, some of the numbers of the registrations to the marathon are going to be released pretty shortly. I won't give too much away, but it's pretty impressive what they've been able to do up until May for an event in September. And I think, there's still a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong, but they're certainly trending in the right direction to get that major in 2025, which is, it's just so exciting. Really is.
Yeah. Well, good news for you is I was in Singapore recently traveling, and I made some new Singaporean friends. And when I told them that I just came from Sydney, they were telling me about how like their Instagram ads and stuff have been filled with Sydney Marathon recently. So yeah,
That's good.
they were thinking of going. So I think they're doing an amazing job already, and it'll be cool to see how far they go. And yeah, like you said, I think the whole city needs to kind of stop for this specific event because that's the sort of atmosphere that you need for like a world major. And I think Sydney is definitely capable of doing that. I think the trickiest bit might just be, the population of Australia is kind of significantly less than the US and like some other countries, right? So we're gonna have to rely a lot on getting international runners to Australia. So we need to, I guess, have like a selling point and have our own differences that are going to attract international runners. But yeah, I'm definitely confident that it can happen in the future, especially with the expanding team and all that. So it's pretty cool to get a bit of insight on that. Yeah, tracking back a little bit to the Athletics NSW job. Yeah, you were always pretty busy because your job was like very broad, right? You're doing a bit here, there. You're in the office sometimes, you're out on the track sometimes. But I guess people see you at the track all the time, so we know, you do a lot of commentary and all that. But I guess when you're in the office on like a weekday, what does your day kind of look like?
Yeah, it varies. You're right. It's very seasonal, so you can basically split the year down the line. Half it's track and field, half it's road and cross country. In terms of the event space. So what I was responsible, and I guess marketing communications was exactly that. It's all the content creation. So doing all the social media graphics, writing all the emails, doing the website copy, talking to event directors, talking to runners, talking to coaches, basically sort of being that communication channel between the office and a lot of stakeholders in New South Wales. That also goes out to clubs as well. So, one of the clubs I've worked with really closely over the years is Bankstown Sports, who run the Albie Thomas Mile, one of the really great middle distance events in Australia, one day events in Australia, and they've got the National Mile Championships now. So sort of working with, Matt and Cole Whitbread. Matt Whitbread's dad is the president of Bankstown. So, developed a really good bond with those guys. But then also working with a lot of different athletics communities. So, we've got the Campbelltown, the Illawong clubs based out of the, excuse me, the south of Sydney, and they run a lot of sprints meets. So they call them the high velocity meets, and they get 300 sprinters there. and some high jumpers and long jumpers and discus throwers as well. So, they're running those meets. And then you've got Throwers Club, who are based out of Greystanes in the sort of western regions of Sydney. They run throws meets. So, it's such a complex sport, athletics. Like, it's not just football or basketball. It's like 14 sports in one. So there's so many different niche communities that you're sort of communicating with all the time, and ultimately just making sure that they're happy, right? Like, we're a membership-based business. People pay us money for a yearly membership and then pay a small entry fee to do whatever the events they want to do. So we need to make sure that they're happy 12 months a year, that we're delivering quality events, that we're coming out with timetables, entry lists in a timely basis, and ultimately that they're just enjoying the sport and making hopefully lifelong friendships out of it. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I did. I must say, one of the things that I am not great at is designing. I'm much better with words and writing. So I'm sort of, in terms of a lot of the content, working with people like yourself, Soda, and Nat Wong, Ryan Jones, now Greg Griffiths, of course, David Tarbotton, who does a lot of the article writing and the historical analysis. Fred Edder, who is going to be is going to be shooting for Team Australia at the World Athletics Championships. Like, that extended pool of, I'll call them content creators, has been absolutely sensational over the last couple of seasons. And all I'm doing is basically adapting the content and their work to speak to the audience in a positive and engaging way. So when you're working with great people who really understand the sport, it actually makes my job really easy, because I understand the sport sort of half as well as Tarby does. So yeah, that's in a long way, that's kind of my day-to-day role. But I think the sort of the next person who takes my role, and it's actually a full-time and a 0.6 role. So I'm getting replaced by 1.6 people, which is cool. It's good for NSW, because that second role is a digital content creator role. So, if I would apply for that role in another lifetime, it means that I could actually focus more on the written copy and maybe a little bit more on broadcasting commentary and those sorts of things. And then you've got someone working 3 days a week who is actually creating all the content, doing the social media graphics, using Adobe to do videos and, Final Cut Pro and all those like cool things that I wish I had the time to do, but I just don't. So I guess moving into the next role, I'd love to actually get better at designing content, but at the same time, I just think, one of my strengths that I've developed is just sort of speaking the language that people understand and want to engage with. So that's that I think that's powerful in any industry.
Yeah, you touched on the fact that you're good at like writing and communicating, and one thing I've noticed is the distance running in NSW Facebook group as well, where you're always posting updates on how Australian runners are doing and all that sort of stuff around the world, which is actually quite useful. I almost use it as like a news feed kind of thing to keep it in touch with the running world when I'm not checking, Instagram and all that stuff. But yeah, talk more about that. Like, was the purpose just to inform more people about what's happening in Australian athletics? Or
Yeah, I think the page actually started out as this elite distance running in New South Wales. So it kind of took an identity shift, because originally I wanted I called it a safe space for the elites to talk to one another. And that it was like that for a few months. And I sort of thought, well, this is great, but there's an opportunity to create a pretty niche platform here. And Inside Running podcast and some of the other podcasts were sort of around at this time. It was like probably 4 years ago now, but still kind of in its infancy. So there probably wasn't the same amount of content, certainly, as there is now. It's we're inundated with podcasts, which is amazing, which is great. It means that people can always listen to something on their long run. But I guess I sort of saw a bit of a need for athletics, or distance running athletics in particular, to sort of be put on a pedestal. So I started sort of just putting in some content there, from New South Wales in the first point action, and then started to flesh out into like world major marathons. So Sinead Diver and Ellie Pashley running, London or New York, whatever it was. And then, people, I was getting some really good feedback. People were coming up to me at track meets saying, oh, it's so good to, like have a platform. Yeah, exactly. Where, it's just popping on my news feed. It's getting to my algorithm. Like it's great to sort of follow along. Maybe in a slightly different medium to a podcast. And I've sort of been a little bit hot and cold in it, but I like to stay as consistent as I can outside of work and running and also personal life, and just sort of keep people updated when I can. There's 8,500 people I think there now, which is fantastic. And I think doing little collabs here and there. I think we did an Inside Running podcast collab a couple of years ago with the London Marathon, where we did sort of a live podcast. And
I remember that.
the guys jumped in. We got a whole bunch of followers on that, which is great. So yeah, it's no, it's good. And like, it's not something that it's not something that I say I'm responsible for the communication of, Distance Running New South Wales. Like, it's not me. It's like, I'm just reposting what's already happening around me. I just happen to say, oh, that's relevant, or I think people like that. So yeah, it's fun. It's a cool little outlet. And hopefully, some people enjoy reading what I have to say.
Yeah. And another thing that came up to mind while you're answering that is, you've worked with an insane amount of elite athletes in the last 6 years, which I think a lot of people will be wondering kind of, I guess, who is an example of an athlete that, you didn't expect to be, this kind of personality when you met them in person. Like, do you see anyone that's quite, maybe quiet on social media, but then quite, extroverted and loud in person or something like that?
Well, that's a good question. I'll tell you, the first boy I fanboyed over was definitely Benny Saint, which is really funny. I think a lot of people will say that, and then they get to know Benny, and he's just a normal guy who just happens to be really fast. He's one of the nicest people in the sport, and I'm really lucky to sort of see him every week now. He's become a good mate of mine, and so I think that's probably one of the first guys that I really looked up to. In terms of people that have surprised me based on their social media presence, I think, I'm trying to think. One of the hardest working athletes, I would say, would be Izzy Thornton Bott. I think Izzy was always the underdog and never got write-ups to be fair, by us or Athletics Australia, and probably a lot of the major outlets. And she just kept grinding and grinding and grinding, and she was one of sort of those more mature age college athletes, and now she's in the best distance running college in the world in Oregon, and running PBs all over the place for 8 and 1500. So I would say Izzy's probably one of the coolest people I've met, just because of her diligence and her dedication to the sport, and I really admire that in any athlete. And then I think out of the guys, like one guy, and like, again, I'm really biased here, but I think a really nice story this season was Luke Boyes. So Luke, literally, I hadn't even heard of the guy. I think he won like all the 400 meters at all schools in 2021 December, and I kind of like remember calling him across the line. I'm like, what's this run crew guy doing 400 meters for? Like, don't they only coach distance runners? And then I sort of got to know him at the start of last season, and then seeing his trajectory again from a kid who like played cricket and ran a little bit in school and little A's, but didn't really take it seriously, to win an Open National bronze medal at 19, going to World Juniors, and being actually legitimately in the conversation to go and represent Australia within the next 12 months. Like, and again, he's one of the most humble guys I've ever met, but has just so much talent, and I would say is a lot quieter than a lot of the other guys on social media and in his demeanor than a lot of the guys around him. So again, biased because he's mate of mine, but I really like Luke. And the stars, Jess, Ollie Hawke came onto the 3K state champs commentary, the live stream a few years ago. incredibly gracious. Basically, did an hour and a half podcast while the graded races were going around. Jess has been on the live stream a couple of times. She was there for Albie Thomas when
And
she was back.
Morgan McDonald as well
Morgan McDonald as
has been
well
once.
a
Yeah.
few years ago. They're all just great people because you're not getting paid to do it. They're just rocking up because they like to support the domestic track meets in their home city, and they want to see the next generation of runners go around, and they love the sport. They just want to be involved in the sport. So I honestly can't say that any of those sort of sub elite or elite athletes, I really haven't come across anyone that I haven't got along with on some sort of level. And the athletes like Jess in particular, it's incredibly hard to go past a nicer person in athletics
Yeah.
than Jess Hull.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I briefly listened to your podcast on Luke Boyce on the Runners Tribe podcast, which I recently found out that you're the host for. So go check it out if you haven't yet. But I heard that he lives in Penrith and he has to travel all the way and has a busy schedule. And, he grew up playing other sports. So it's pretty cool to hear his kind of progression in a short amount of time to being in the conversation of getting into a world championship. And yeah, you're obviously teammates with him in Run Crew now, which is pretty cool as well. And yeah, on Izzy Thornton Bot, I think I first met her at the RIP challenge in 2020 when it was raining, where yeah, she was taking photos back then.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think I had a conversation with her shortly after or something, and she was talking about how she's had like health issues or something like that, and she was coming back from it. And yeah, like a year later or 2 years later or something, she won the 1500 state title. And then she just went on an absolute rampage and then got into Oregon. And now, she's an amazing miler. She even won the Australian Mile Championships, Albie
yeah.
Thomas. So yeah, her story is amazing. And I think she's a, runner that I want to get on the podcast as well. Because I think she has a big story to tell. But yeah, I think because Australia is like a smaller population, like I was talking about earlier, it seems like the running community is a lot more tight knit and the kind of separation between just your average regular runner to Olympians is a small gap. Like they're more than happy to chat to you and all that. Because when Ollie Hoare was in Sydney for the 3K champs commentating with you, I think afterwards it might have been the year Zach Faccioni won.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And yeah, I remember you were interviewing Zach, and then I was in the background, and it was just me and Ollie Hoare there. So I inevitably started talking to him, but he was just the most like chill guy, and he immediately took the conversation off him, and then started talking about like Morgan's success. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see how humble they are as well. And yeah, I love the Australian elite runners. They're all really friendly. I haven't come across anyone that's not friendly either. So I think that's a special thing that we have here in the Australian running community. But yeah, just to slowly wrap things up, obviously your role is being split into 1.6 roles, I guess you said, in a way. But I'm just wondering to whoever takes on that role, like, what do you think the most important personality trait and strength is for them to have in order to kind of succeed in the role taken over you?
I think it's to listen and learn. So I knew nothing about the sport when I started, and I just it was basically osmosis. Like I was just soaking up as much as I possibly could. You have to learn about race walking. You have to learn about shot put. You want to know about para athletics as well. Like it's that is a real growth in our sport that I've loved seeing, and particularly when Sydney was in lockdown and everyone was just watching the Paralympics, and we saw Jared Clifford and Madison de Rosario do those incredible things on the track. Like it was like, damn, this sport's come a long way in para athletics, and that's something I'm particularly proud of in New South Wales. That I've seen that junior contingent of para athletes at least double since I started, probably triple to be honest, and having like multiple races of the 100 meters in a particular age group for the para women and the para men is phenomenal. So that's a really cool area I want to shout out as well. But yeah, it's just to listen and learn, and to like athletics is not rocket science, and the people all really nice. There's very few people in athletics who you can't get along with again on some level. So it's sort of just relationship building and speak the language, let people know what's going on in a timely manner, and put on, help market good quality events, because that's really all I've done. I haven't done anything special. I haven't, done the greatest social media campaign, put $10,000 behind it and got all these reactions and engagements and, viral videos. I haven't done any of that. I just haven't. But I've just decided to kind of chip away and stay consistent, and, always be somewhere near the front of the athlete's mind. Oh yeah, the miles is on this weekend. Oh yeah, all scores is around the corner. Oh yeah, Sydney 10. Okay, that's happening. Yes, this is the finishers medal. Oh cool, I get free photos again this year. Now I don't have to pay $30 to marathon photos. Like, all those little things, they all add up, and that incremental success comes with time. You don't do it overnight. So yeah, I wish that next two people all the best. And I think ANSW is in a really cool position. It's certainly a better position than when I started. And I always maintain the fact that I want to sort of leave whilst the sport was in a better place than when I started. I can safely say that it is.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure we'll still see you around the Athletics NSW community. You'll still be at the races and all that. Maybe you'll be more involved in the actual racing side now that you got a little extra
Yeah, who knows?
responsibility.
Might get a warm up for a race for once.
Yeah, I remember
I'll
you
be.
have some pretty handy PBs.
Oh, I'm a bit of a way off of it at the moment. Well, I was going to say as well, like the commentary side, I've really loved, doing all the commentary gigs, with Matt, with Nathan Breen, the voice of athletics, Nathan Breen. So I'm not going to be far away from a commentary box. I'm still going to be at the Milers meets. I'll be on the start line of Sydney 10. So yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm saying goodbye, but I'm kind of not really going anywhere, particularly for those in the running community. Like, you'll probably see me even more now because I can make some more meets.
True. Well, I'm glad you're carrying on the commentary because you're definitely good at that. And I always use your commentary from IRP challenge or whatever, where you said my name in like some like video voiceovers and stuff. Or like if I'm trying to make a highlight reel for my YouTube, I still use that. I think it was like Soda Mahar is controlling this race or something. I still use that 2 second clip on some of my videos.
uh,
So yeah, it's pretty
I've,
funny.
I'm sure there's some lines over the years I'd love to delete from memory, but they're going to be there in cyberspace forever. So hopefully I can only get better with time. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you found some use in one of the lines.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm sure we'll do one down the line because, if Sydney does become a world major, I want to hear all about it and stuff. So we'll keep in touch. Hopefully we'll meet one day in Sydney again. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, mate. And congratulations on starting the podcast. It's really good. And I wish you all the success with the next few guests.
Thank you so much.